Welcome back to the deep dive. So you're here because you've got this intense curiosity and you've brought us a stack of really cutting-edge research.
Yeah, we're talking articles, expert analyses, and that key AI news digest from the very start of 2026.
Exactly. And your mission, which is also our mission, is to find the ultimate shortcut.
Yeah.
How do you get fully informed on, what is probably the most profound technological shift of our time?
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, without just getting completely buried under all the noise.
Exactly. And our listener, you're looking past the hype cycle, right? AI is transforming the world, but you need the substance. You need specific technical breakthroughs and, maybe more importantly, the critical trade-offs that are happening right now. We really need to show how this tech is fundamentally changing professional life, across the entire spectrum.
And that spectrum, that's really the core of our deep dive today, isn't it? Because AI isn't just one monolithic thing anymore.
Not at all.
It's this incredibly versatile, single technological engine that is making these immediate, really tangible waves across dramatically different sectors. We're going to track its influence from clinic
Super sensitive environment.
to the high-frequency, kind of chaotic world of the global financial market, and then even into the often ethereal world of the artist's studio.
And that AI News Digest you shared with us, it provides a perfect, really immediate snapshot of all this.
Yeah.
It's not looking 5 years down the road.
No, this is now.
This is now. It's reporting on innovations that are currently being integrated, which means they require immediate responses, both from lawmakers and from professionals in the field.
So our mission today is to dive into those groundbreaking innovations in 3 very distinct areas. We're talking healthcare, finance, and the creative arts.
Right.
And we need to do more than just, celebrate the revolutionary potential. We have to really address the severe, critical challenges that each of these sectors is facing.
Absolutely. Things like managing incredibly sensitive medical data.
Or establishing transparency in these super complex financial algorithms.
And then the big one, redefining the very concept of what human creativity and authorship even means.
It's really an investigation into versatility, but as you said, maybe it's more of an investigation into accountability.
I think that's the perfect way to frame it.
Okay, let's unpack this. And we're going to start where the impact is, I think, the most immediate and really the most profound, AI in healthcare. So the lead story in your digest, and frankly, it's one of the most compelling pieces of tech news I've seen in the last quarter, is the unveiling of this new AI-powered diagnostic tool. And this isn't just some, incremental software update. The language they're using is serious. They're describing a state-of-the-art system that analyzes medical images with, and I'm quoting here, unprecedented accuracy.
And that phrase, unprecedented accuracy, we really need to break that down to get our heads around the achievement here. In a field like pathology or, say, radiology, we're talking about interpreting really subtle visual data. Things like microcalcifications in a mammogram.
Tiny. Things the human eye could easily miss.
So easily. Or tiny lesions on an MRI, or these barely perceptible structural abnormalities in a cardiac scan. Now, human interpretation is highly skilled, of course, but it suffers from things like fatigue and subjectivity.
And the specific metrics that the source material outlines they're just staggering. We are not talking about small marginal improvements here.
No, this is a step change.
The system, in clinical trials, demonstrated a 99.7% accuracy rate in detecting early-stage pancreatic cancer from high-resolution CT scans. Now, that represents a 5% improvement over the current gold standard, which is set by expert human radiologists.
And a 5% improvement might not sound like a lot, but when you're looking at early-stage diagnosis for cancers known for, their silent progression, that 5% translates directly into saved lives. It's monumental.
It's absolutely a monumental shift because the AI can spot these patterns in the noise that the human brain is simply not equipped to perceive on a rapid, consistent basis.
Exactly. And the applications are already focused on the most serious, the most time-sensitive conditions. Things like cancer, heart disease, and neurodegenerative disorders.
So it's not just about accuracy, it's also about speed.
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
The AI can shave weeks off the diagnostic timeline. You move from a process that requires multiple specialists to review a case to a near-instantaneous high-confidence identification.
So let's get into the mechanics here, because I know you, our listener, you're curious about the how. Why is this particular AI so much more effective than the systems we had just, say, a few years ago?
Okay, so it really boils down to 2 things: volume and architecture. The source material confirms this system was trained on, wait for it, Millions of data points.
Million.
And when we say data points, we mean images, associated genetic profiles, treatment outcomes, historical patient demographics. It's an enormous data set. This is a level of experience no single physician or even a huge team of physicians could ever hope to amass in a lifetime.
So you're saying it's essentially the collective knowledge and the visual experience of every major medical center that contributed data to the project, all just distilled and packaged into one algorithm.
It's a perfect analogy. It's precisely that. And then there's the second piece, the underlying architecture. It's typically based on what's called a convolutional neural network, or a CNN.
Okay, break that down for us. What's a CNN?
Think of a CNN as a specialized vision system for a machine. Instead of analyzing an image as a whole, it uses multiple deep layers to analyze increasingly complex features.
Layers.
Yeah. So the first layer might just look for simple things like edges and curves. The next layer might look for textures. The layer after that looks for specific shapes. And then the final layer puts it all together to identify the overall pattern that defines, say, a malignant tumor versus a benign cyst.
So it builds understanding from simple to complex.
Exactly. And the crucial part is it learns to recognize tumors not because a programmer wrote a bunch of rules.
Like if you see the shape, it's a tumor.
Right. None of that. It learns by statistically correlating billions of successful and unsuccessful diagnoses from its training data until it identifies the most predictive visual signals on its own. It teaches itself what to look for.
And the practical benefit of all that complexity then flows through into what you mentioned earlier, the speed and, importantly, the reduction of human fallibility. The AI provides a rigorous, objective, and above all, a consistent second opinion. Or, in many cases, it's now becoming the highly efficient first reading.
And that rigor, that consistency, that's paramount. It's what's driving all the optimism that this movement represents a major step forward in personalized medicine.
Okay, that's another term that gets thrown around a lot, personalized medicine. What does this AI specifically make possible in that area that just wasn't feasible before?
So personalized medicine, in this context, it's about moving beyond these standardized one-size-fits-all protocols. You know, the old model of if patient X has symptoms Y, you prescribe treatment Z.
Right.
AI makes it possible to tailor every single step, from diagnosis to prevention, based on a patient's unique characteristics. This diagnostic tool doesn't just look for a generic tumor.
It's not pattern matching in a simple way.
No. It looks at the patient's specific image characteristics, it integrates their demographic data, it can cross-reference the genetic markers if that data is provided, and then it compares that whole comprehensive profile against the millions of historical outcomes in its database.
So it moves from a generalized finding like this looks like cancer to something much more specific.
Exactly. It moves to a highly specific, probability-based prediction for that individual patient. It might say, this specific subtype of tumor in a patient with this genetic marker and this demographic profile has an 87% chance of responding to this specific therapy. It allows for care that is truly, truly granular.
That immediately leads us to a really crucial question about the practical shift, in the day-to-day role of medical professionals. If the AI is so incredibly good at processing and interpreting these complex data sets, why do we even need the doctor to verify the diagnosis? Isn't that just redundant expertise at that point?
It's a fundamentally skeptical question, but it's an absolutely necessary one. And the answer really lies in two key areas: liability and, crucially, human judgment.
Okay.
While the AI is an invaluable assistant, as the sources call it, for processing the data, the physician is still absolutely needed for two things: contextualizing the result and providing ethical oversight.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the AI is essentially removing this massive cognitive load that's associated with image analysis.
Yeah.
And this frees up the human professional to focus on the soft skills, the critical human element, direct patient interaction, and holistic care.
Think about the typical pressure points in a hospital. Doctors are exhausted. They're juggling administrative tasks, trying to keep up with the latest research, and they are staring at screens for hours and hours, interpreting dense, difficult imagery.
The burnout is real.
Burnout is very real. The AI takes over that demanding, time-intensive pattern recognition. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't have a bad day. It processes the image in seconds and presents the physician with a high confidence finding, often with the specific regions of interest already highlighted.
So the doctor's time shifts. It shifts from staring at the stand, trying to find the problem,
to focusing on the patient, trying to manage the problem. Yes.
They can spend less time on the diagnosis verification and more time actually explaining the prognosis, discussing treatment options, and offering that essential emotional support that no algorithm, no matter how smart, can ever provide.
The human touch. It remains the core function. It allows the whole healthcare system to scale more effectively while preserving and maybe even enhancing the quality of patient engagement.
But, and there's always a but, this immense power immediately transitions us to the necessary ethical discussions, the regulatory hurdles that just have to accompany these systems.
They have to, and the source material was very, very clear on this. It details two primary non-negotiable concerns that must be managed as this technology rolls out globally.
And the first is the big one.
It's the big one, data privacy. We just established that the system's power comes from its access to millions of sensitive patient records.
Yeah.
We're talking medical histories, detailed imagery, even genetic sequences. The integrity of these systems relies on these massive centralized data lakes.
And the stakes here are just enormous. I mean, a data breach involving a patient's financial information is bad. It's damaging.
Absolutely.
But a breach of their detailed medical imagery and history, their specific vulnerabilities, their private struggles, that's a profound and potentially catastrophic violation of security and trust.
It necessitates entirely new levels of digital protection. And beyond that, how do we handle the ethical gray area of consent?
Right.
Most of the data used for training these incredible systems was gathered historically, years ago, before the patient could possibly have known it would be used to train an AI that would determine future treatments for other people.
So the original consent form didn't cover training a superintelligent diagnostic machine.
Not even close. And while anonymization is always the goal, true, perfect anonymization is very difficult. Re-identification remains a persistent risk.
So what's the solution people are talking about?
This has led to this intense debate about implementing new systems like federated learning.
Federated learning.
Yeah, the idea is that instead of pooling all the sensitive data in one central place, which is a huge target for attack, you send the AI model to the data. The data stays secure at the individual hospital behind its firewall. The AI model trains on the local data, learns from it, and then just the learnings, not the data itself, are sent back and aggregated with the learnings from other hospitals.
So the data never leaves its home base.
Exactly. It's a really complex technical solution to a profoundly difficult ethical problem.
Okay, and the second critical concern that the sources highlighted, it speaks to the overall ecosystem, right? The critical need for robust regulatory frameworks.
Yes. This is where liability gets incredibly tangled. Who certifies the accuracy of a dynamic, ever-learning AI model? It's not a static piece of software.
It's constantly changing as it gets more data.
Precisely. And what happens if the AI, which often operates on logic that's opaque to its own creators, the famous black box problem?
Right.
What happens if it makes a wrong call? Who is liable? Is it the developer who sold the model? The hospital that implemented it? Or is it the diagnosing physician who looked at the tool's 99.7% confidence rating and decided to trust it?
It creates this liability stack that our current medical legislation just isn't designed to handle.
Not at all.
If a human doctor makes a diagnostic error, the framework for malpractice is relatively clear, if complicated.
Yeah.
But if a machine makes an error because of some rare, unforeseen data bias, the legal response is completely unclear.
And that's why regulations have to step in. They have to establish transparency requirements, forcing developers to create what's called explainable AI, or XAI. These are tools that can document and show the precise data factors that drove a particular diagnosis.
So it can't just say, this is cancer. It has to say, I believe this is cancer because of these 10 specific features in the scan.
That's the goal. Until that framework is clear and legally binding, widespread adoption is going to be bottlenecked by legal risk, no matter how great the life-saving potential is.
It's the classic tension, isn't it? The rate of technological change is, as always, just constantly outstripping the rate of our legislative and regulatory adaptation.
It's a story as old as technology itself. Speed versus safety.
Speed versus safety. Okay, let's make a transition now.
Yeah.
We're moving from the intensely personal stakes of the human body and the privacy of individual patients to the equally high stakes, but far more impersonal world of global economics. So we're switching gears completely. We're going from optimizing human life to optimizing wealth generation. And AI is proving to be just as much of a game changer in the world of finance, maybe even more aggressive in its adoption.
Oh, definitely more aggressive.
A leading global financial firm has recently launched this massive AI-driven platform that's focused entirely on sophisticated investment strategies.
And this is really where AI's core capacity for speed, for deep analysis, and for data synthesis truly leaves human capability in the dust.
How so?
Well, traditional financial analysis, it relies on quarterly reports, historical data, macroeconomic trends. It's fundamentally slow. It's backward looking.
Right, you're always reacting to what already happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This new platform, according to the sources we have, doesn't just analyze market trends. It predicts stock movements with what they call remarkable accuracy across a whole range of different asset classes.
That phrase, remarkable accuracy, that's the siren song for every investor, isn't it? But the global market is famously complex. I mean, it's driven by unforeseen geopolitical events, by human irrationality, by emergent technologies. How is an algorithm succeeding where some of the best human minds so often fail?
It's the sheer scale and the comprehensive nature of the machine learning algorithms they're using. They are operating far, far beyond traditional quantitative models.
So they're not just looking at standard metrics like PE ratios or interest rates.
Not even close. They assess this vast, multi-layered array of data points all at the same time, which allows them to spot these subtle, non-obvious correlations that are, for all practical purposes, invisible to any single human analyst or even a team of analysts.
And what's fascinating to me here is the sheer breadth of the data they are incorporating to achieve this complexity. The sources detail the standard stuff, of course, the global economic indicators, but then they also cite sources like natural language processing, or NLP, of every central bank press conference and every earnings call transcript. Satellite imagery.
And crucially, social media sentiment.
And that combination, particularly the inclusion of those non-traditional data sources, that's what provides the competitive edge.
The secret sauce.
The secret sauce. The AI is trained to understand that market movements are increasingly driven by these immediate psychological factors, by fear, by greed, by the collective mood. So by quantifying social media sentiment, by analyzing millions of posts on platforms like X, Reddit, and specific investor forums, the AI can gauge the market's emotional temperature and the velocity of a discussion in real time.
Okay, walk us through that process for a second. That sounds almost like magic. How do you quantify something as messy and subjective as social media sentiment?
So it involves really sophisticated NLP models. First, the machine pulls in, billions of text posts that are relevant to a specific stock or a sector. So it's just scraping everything.
Everything. Second, it uses sentiment analysis models to score each of those posts based on its emotional content. Is it positive, negative, or neutral? But then crucially, it applies even more sophisticated models for things like toxicity scoring and velocity analysis.
Velocity analysis.
Yeah. A single negative post isn't really a signal, it's just noise.
Right.
But 100,000 posts showing a rapid, increasing negative sentiment about a specific corporation over a 3-hour window, especially if that discussion starts generating words associated with fear or panic.
That's a very strong signal.
It's an extremely predictive indicator of market behavior, and it often precedes the actual price drop by hours or sometimes even days.
So the AI doesn't wait for the official news release or the quarterly earnings report to come out. It's instantaneously assessing the emotional ripple effect of every single piece of data, and it's factoring that psychological momentum into its prediction of the stock movement.
Exactly. It quantifies the qualitative inputs of human behavior. And this capability, it provides insights that go far, far beyond what any team of traditional human analysts could ever hope to achieve.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. The digest we looked at, it mentions that the AI identified this consistent 48-hour lag between Chinese manufacturing sentiment expressed on the platform Weibo and the subsequent movement of specific U.S.-listed supply chain ETFs. Now, that's a correlation that would be utterly impossible for a human to track manually across such disparate data sets and languages.
The implications of that for financial advisors and investors are just massive. With AI's ability to sift through these enormous data sets and identify these real-time, high-velocity patterns, investment strategies can become more dynamic and responsive to real-time changes.
We are absolutely moving away from passive long-term management and towards active, minute-by-minute portfolio optimization.
So we're really talking about true algorithmic portfolio management.
Yes. If the platform detects a sudden shift, let's say a sharp drop in satellite imagery, that indicates reduced shipping container activity at key global ports, and it combines that with a plummeting sentiment score regarding a critical manufacturing sector.
Hmm.
It could adjust portfolios or execute trades instantaneously
Before a human even has their morning coffee.
before a human even knows there's a problem.
Hmm.
And this speed, this breadth, it translates directly into faster, better informed financial decisions for the investor,
Yeah.
especially in high volatility environments.
Again, the very complexity and the speed that deliver this incredible advantage lead directly to the challenges inherent in this technology. Challenges the financial sector is wrestling with every single day.
And the primary challenge, and this is flagged in bold in the digest, is the critical need for transparency in algorithmic decision-making.
The black box problem again.
The definitive black box problem, but now with trillions of dollars on the line. In finance, if a major prediction leads to a significant loss or a massive gain, both investors and, more importantly, regulators need to understand how that prediction was made.
And that's the issue, right? The algorithms are built on these deep neural networks, and they're drawing non-linear correlations across thousands of disparate data sets. They might be linking, I don't know, rainfall levels in South America to the stock price of a German automotive company.
And the logic isn't written down in a rule book anywhere. It's emergent. The machine discovered it. It can't always explain it in human terms.
And that lack of transparency, it poses a massive systemic risk.
It does. And we have to consider the trade-off here. The more complex and opaque the model is, the higher its accuracy tends to be. The more you force the model to be explainable or transparent, the more you often restrict its predictive power.
So you're trading performance for clarity.
You are. And regulators have to decide what that trade-off should be. I mean, if a trillion-dollar asset manager is basing its biggest decisions on this opaque logic, how do regulators possibly audit it? If the system has an error or some subtle bias it learned from the data, how do you trace the cause without full visibility into its weighted decisions?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is the devastating systemic risk of over-reliance on machine predictions. This goes beyond just simple human psychology. This is about algorithmic monoculture.
The algorithmic herd mentality. That's a great way to put it.
Explain that.
Well, if every major financial firm is licensing or building very similar machine learning models,
Yeah.
and they're all trained on very similar data inputs,
Which
they are, then what happens when all of those models spot the same trend and signal a massive sell-off at the exact same moment?
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Precisely. The machine's prediction doesn't just reflect the fundamental economic reality anymore. It creates the market reality. And this can trigger flash crashes or these sudden, inexplicable periods of volatility where the market moves violently for no apparent reason.
The machine itself is generating the chaos purely through its collective, synchronized action.
Yes. And this means the key objective moving forward, the real challenge, is striking a balance between human intuition and machine efficiency.
So the human element must remain the ultimate arbiter.
It has to. The machine provides the data, the prediction, and the speed, but the human trader or the advisor must be the one to apply judgment, ethical consideration, and understand the potential broader consequences that the algorithm, which is focused purely on maximizing profit or minimizing loss, is going to miss.
They have to be the one to ask the critical, what if everyone does this at the same time, question that the machine just can't.
Exactly. It seems in finance, just as it was in medicine, the most sophisticated tool is ultimately useless or even dangerous without a human gatekeeper providing context, skepticism, and oversight. The stakes are simply too high to outsource judgment completely.
Absolutely. The machine is a tool for finding the opportunity, but the human has to be the one to determine the risk tolerance and the ethical boundaries.
Well said.
Okay. Now let's make what is perhaps the most dramatic shift of all in our conversation. We're moving away from optimizing life and optimizing wealth, and we're moving into the ultimate optimization problem. Optimizing imagination. It is genuinely incredible how versatile AI is proving to be across these completely disparate domains. I mean, we started with the cold precision of diagnostics, moved to the high velocity of stock prediction, and now we're shifting our focus entirely.
To show that AI is not just about crunching numbers.
Not at all. It's creating images, music, poetry. It is making unbelievable strides in the field of creativity and imagination.
And this development, it really forces us to confront the very definition of creativity itself. I mean, for centuries, art has been viewed as this purest form of uniquely human expression.
The last bastion of what makes us human, some would say.
They would. But the source describes a new AI application designed specifically for artists, and it utilizes highly advanced generative algorithms.
Okay, let's clearly define what makes an algorithm generative, because this is conceptually very different from the analytical AI we've been discussing in finance and medicine.
That's a great point. So analytical AI looks at data and finds patterns or makes predictions. Generative algorithms, on the other hand, specifically those based on models like diffusion models or GANs.
GANs being generative adversarial networks.
Right. They don't just interpret existing data. Their primary function is to create novel data. They're trained on billions of existing images or musical scores or texts, and they learn the underlying stylistic rules, the composition, the aesthetics of that data.
So they learn what art looks like statistically.
In a way, yes. And then, when given a human prompt, they can produce entirely new, unique output that has never existed before, which makes them inherently creative tools.
And the practical function of this new application that the digest talks about, it confirms that boundary crossing. It positions the AI not just as a tool that edits images like Photoshop,
Not at all.
but as a genuine creative partner, helping creators push the limits of digital art and expression.
Yeah, the digest details several ways this tool assists artists. It acts as an incredible rapid prototyping engine. Imagine a concept artist who can now generate 100 variations of a character design in minutes.
Something that would have taken weeks of human labor before.
Exactly. It can offer unexpected suggestions for new artistic directions, breaking an artist out of a creative rut. But the real headline grabber, the detail that really made me pause, is that the AI could even complete entire sections of a canvas based on the artistic context provided by the human collaborator.
Wow, okay, let's ground that with a concrete example. So an abstract painter starts a massive canvas, paints the central figures, establishes the color palette, and then they can direct the AI through a prompt and the existing image data to seamlessly generate the intricate, hyperreal texture of the background, or maybe the final, complex details of a swirling sky, perfectly matching the style that the human created.
Exactly that. This collaboration, it accelerates the execution of an idea exponentially. It allows an artist to conceptualize something far grander or more complex than they could ever execute within a reasonable time frame.
So they can rely on the machine for the complex, repetitive, or maybe mathematically perfect aspects of creation.
Right, things like generating photorealistic water reflections or extremely complex digital fractal patterns. And the immediate result of this is an active, undeniable blurring of the lines between human creativity and machine input, and it's opening up entirely new artistic styles.
It sounds like the ultimate force multiplier for artistic output. But this partnership, it immediately leads us into a philosophical minefield, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The source notes the art world is abuzz with the potential of AI collaborations, but also deeply, deeply conflicted.
It's an intellectual crisis point. The philosophical weight of this technology is immense because it challenges the core cultural value we place on artistic labor and human intention.
And the art world has pretty naturally split into two very definable ideological camps based on their acceptance of this technology.
That's right. On one side, you have the purists, and their stance is crystal clear. Art should remain a solely human endeavor.
For them, the authenticity lies in the struggle.
In the struggle, the intention, the manual labor, the physical presence of the human hand that transfers emotional expression to the medium. If a machine completes a section, or even more controversially, if the machine generates the foundational idea itself, they argue that the work loses its spiritual legitimacy, it loses its soul.
So they see it as highly sophisticated plagiarism, not true creation.
That's a good way of putting it. They're essentially arguing that the tool diminishes the value, regardless of the aesthetic outcome. For them, the process matters more than the final product.
And the other side?
The other side, we can call them the evolutionists. They embrace this fusion of technology and artistry as just a natural evolution of the craft.
Their argument is historically grounded, right?
Very much so. They argue that artists have always adopted the most advanced technology available to them, from the invention of perspective painting techniques in the Renaissance, to the use of photography, to digital software like Photoshop in our own lifetimes.
So for them, AI is simply the next, exponentially more powerful paintbrush.
Exactly. It frees the artist from tedious execution, and it allows them to focus purely on the conceptualization, on the vision.
And for you, our listener, as you're grappling with this new landscape, the central philosophical question really becomes, who is the artist when a machine completes the canvas? If the human provides the prompt, something like generate a hyperrealist portrait of a robot experiencing melancholy, and the AI executes 99% of the pixels, is the human the author, or is the prompt itself the artwork?
It forces us to radically redefine authorship. The value shifts from the human's mastery of the brush, the execution, to the human's mastery of the concept, the prompt, and very importantly, the curation.
Curation.
Yeah, if I ask the AI to generate a sequence of 50 images based on my prompt, and then I use my artistic judgment to select the single perfect image from that batch, my creative input is selection and direction. The work is a product of collaboration, but we haven't yet agreed on the legal and cultural framework for how to credit that collaboration.
This challenge must be hitting galleries, critics, and auction houses really hard. How do you even attribute value? Is the value in the final aesthetic product, the innovative conceptual prompt, or maybe the rarity, the specific algorithm that was used?
And the immediate impact is on provenance, on artistic lineage. For instance, if an artist trains a model exclusively on their own life's work, their own paintings, and then uses that model to generate new pieces in their signature style, that might be culturally accepted.
Like an extension of their own mind.
Right. But if an artist trains a model on the aggregated work of 1,000 existing copyrighted artists and then generates something, well, the legal standing and the ethical weight of that change dramatically. The future of art depends entirely on resolving these kinds of attribution issues.
So, synthesizing all of this, what do you predict the future of art will ultimately look like as AI continues to develop and these generative algorithms become even more sophisticated?
I think the future of expression is going to be defined by this human-machine partnership. The focus is less on AI replacing artists because that capacity for unique, driving human vision is still absolutely required.
Right.
And more on redefining the creative process. It becomes a process of iteration and conceptual direction. The artist becomes a highly skilled editor and a curator of potential outputs, using the machine to explore these vast landscapes of possibility in a fraction of the time.
So it effectively turns the artist into a conceptual director. The ultimate skill isn't manual dexterity anymore, but conceptual clarity, the ability to articulate a complex vision to a machine.
That's it. It's a fascinating revolutionary shift, and it shows AI's penetration into the most intimate realms of human endeavor. It is, I think, the ultimate expression of AI's versatility.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We've used the source material to reveal not just that AI is changing things, but how it is changing things, specifically and drastically, across three fundamentally different sectors of life.
Yeah, we saw AI revolutionizing healthcare diagnosis, leveraging those convolutional neural networks trained on millions of data points to offer unprecedented accuracy.
Driving personalized medicine forward.
Then we explored how it's reshaping financial strategies, sifting through global indicators and high-velocity social media sentiment to create these dynamic investment models that move faster than any human capacity.
And finally, we saw it inspiring entirely new forms of art, forcing the art world to question the very definitions of creativity and authorship as generative algorithms become really equal partners in the artistic process. So across the board, AI isn't just a specialized tool anymore. It is a fundamental, versatile, and transformative force that is impacting nearly every facet of your life, whether you're a patient hoping for an early diagnosis, an investor managing risk, or simply someone who appreciates a piece of art.
And that speed, that ubiquity, the sheer reliance on these complex dynamic algorithms to make high-stakes decisions, it demands a final, crucial thought, a thought that connects all the threads we've talked about: accountability in finance, privacy in health, and authorship in art.
The ultimate question that binds all these breakthroughs together?
Precisely. Across all these sectors, when a machine diagnoses a disease with 99.7% certainty, when it predicts a stock crash hours before human recognition, or when it generates a masterpiece based on a simple prompt, we see the lines of direct human control receding as the algorithm takes over more and more of the complex decision-making process.
Right.
This raises an important question for you, the learner, to consider as you navigate this new world. As AI decision-making becomes ubiquitous, where does the ultimate accountability for an error, for a loss, or for a triumph ultimately reside? Is it with the programmer who coded the initial logic and the training parameters? Is it with the operator who directed and utilized the tool? Or is it with the dynamic, ever-learning, opaque algorithm itself that made the decision in that moment?
A profound challenge to our legal, ethical, and our professional systems that I think is going to define the next decade. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Stay curious.
I'll talk to you next time.